Welcome to another episode of the House of Muscle. On this episode, we're bringing you what I would consider a rather obscure car. And I'm going to give out 10 House of Muscle points to whomever figures it out. I'm going to give you 3 clues, right? So, 1, it is a Mopar. 2, only 145 of them were ever made. 3, it has a tough wheel steering wheel. Those are your 3 clues. Any ideas? I'm going to wait. Anything? Nothing? All right, fine. So, what we are behind the wheel of right now is a 1978 Dodge Aspen street kit car. In 1978, that was obviously a dismal time for the American automotive manufacturing companies because performance was just in the toilet. There wasn't really anything out there that was ripping up the pavement, but enthusiasts still wanted something, right? They wanted to feel like they could get behind the wheel of something, and even if it wasn't fast, well, it looked fast. This is 2018 and we're driving this thing and people are just like, what in the holy crap is that thing with the numbers on it? To the 4-year-old boy in all of us, it's the greatest thing in the world, right? We look at this car and I was like, I want to turn it into a Matchbox car and I want to put it on like my old AFX track and run it around. Like that's what this car says to me. For those of you guys out there that know about Chrysler and Dodge from Plymouth and back in the day, they always built, in my opinion, the best drivetrains, transmissions, and rear ends. I mean, these things were pretty bulletproof, right? The 727, the Dana, the 8 3/4 the rear, the 360, the 440, the 426. These are all legendary hammers that lived under the bonnets of these things. But the bodies, not so much.
I really was searching for one of these cars because I had one when I was about 19 years old, had it through the time I was about 21 years old, and you know how people do with old cars, you have a lot of great memories. It was an extraordinarily rare car. I'm not sure that I appreciated how rare it was when I had it at 19. Just thought needed to get another one about 39 years later. You've heard this story 1,000 times, probably more. But the car is definitely unique. The muscle car era was over, and a lot of cars pretended to try to look like a muscle car, but it was really very unique in that it had a police pursuit motor, it still was fast. The 43, it connected to Richard Petty, and everybody understands the Dodge connection with Richard Petty. It was part of the direct connection plan with Mopar. So it had a lot of those emotional things for me, and oh, by the way, at that time, it was extraordinarily fast compared to the competition.
Now, before you get all up in Randy's face about calling a 1978 Dodge Aspen extraordinarily fast, you need to put it in context in relation to the other high-performance cars of the day. For instance, a 1978 Pontiac Trans Am with a 6.6-liter and an automatic ran 0 to 60 in 7.4 seconds. A 1978 Corvette ran it in 7.8, and hell, even a 1978 Ferrari 308, a car that cost 7 times more than the Aspen, only ran it in 7.2 seconds. That's just 1/10 of a second quicker than the Aspen. Now, with that being said, the claimed 0 to 60 time of 7.3 for the kit car was pretty friggin' quick. Like I said, put it in context, people. Context.
Today we think about horsepower wars and technology wars, and in the 60s we certainly thought about horsepower wars. Back then we didn't talk about horsepower because the numbers weren't impressive. But if you could still beat your buddy, that was impressive.
What was it powered by? Well, this was an E58 option 360 with a 4-barrel on it. Now, the horsepower numbers are in discussion, right? I haven't really been able to nail them down. But what I have been able to find was 220 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. Driving this car right now keep in mind, I actually have a camera guy in here. If I nail it, right, it pulls pretty good. Like, those numbers are not what I would consider off, right? The ass dyno was saying, it's about right, okay? Now, granted, we're talking about numbers that you would currently go out and find in something like a Honda Accord or a Civic or something like that, so they're not stellar, especially from a V8. But again, back in the late 70s, that was pretty good, and it still does have that same kind of throw you back in your seat feel. I mean, well, maybe not a throw you back, maybe just kind of like a little breeze pushing you back.
It's not fast by today's standards, and it's not fast by the 60s standards, but in its day, this car was the fastest passenger car built in the United States. The experience when driving the car is really kind of mixed. You'll get a group of people who think that it's 100% custom. You know, that's something that I did. And I guess to some extent they're right, it is custom, but it was custom by Dodge, not custom by Randy. One of the unique things about this car is it is bucket seats and console shift. Many of them were bench seat column shift cars. There's people who have heard about it, have never seen one, and are surprised and get a big kick out of it. They remember the direct connection piece, they remember the petty piece. I generally keep the Motor Trend magazine with me so that people, if there's any doubters, naysayers, I can say, here you go, and I'm not making it up. Most of the time it's thumbs up. I think they get the thumbs up because of the 43 on the side. I mean, you know, there's no more iconic person on the planet when it comes to racing than Richard Petty. So I tend to believe it's more about the 43 on the side than it is about the car, but who knows?
I'll burst your bubble, but I'm going to. So I've got 4 hood pins on the front of this car. Now, Mopar guys are going to be like, well, those are like the M-Code Roadrunners of back in the day where, you know, you'd lift the hood up and you put on the 4 posts and the code would yeah, no, those are totally just screwed into the hood by the dealers, and that's what they look like. They serve absolutely no purpose whatsoever. There are cables with pins, and they're for show only. The front window tabs, stupid cool. I absolutely love the way they work and the way they look. Same for the back tabs on the windshield. That's straight NASCAR stuff. And do they do anything? Well, no. But they did take people back to that NASCAR styling. Same with the massive wing, which is actually one of my favorite parts because the wing, believe it or not, has a little adjustment where it's a 2-piece wing and you can actually move the top portion up and down. It's really slick. What else do we have? Well, if I look out these quarter glasses, I have quarter glass louvers on it. They're another piece that's actually really, really cool and shit straight out of the 1970s, right? That was like a big deal to have anything louvered on your car, right? You bought a car, you put louvers on it, you grew yourself a mullet, and you drank a Coors Light. That's what you did back then. As far as the fender flares go, those were straight bolt-ons, right? When these cars left the plant, they went to another organization which basically saws all the fenders and then bolted them back on to make them look like this. I don't even want to know what the fenders look like if you were to pull the flares off. Because again, this was late 70s Chrysler. This was late 70s Dodge and Plymouth. And what you had wasn't called quality. It was called, we're going to build these cars and hopefully they'll sell, but they're not very good. Now, when we talk about how the car drives, this is one of my favorite things about old Mopars. Ready? Check it out. You know what's happening? Nothing. We're not going left. We're not going right. I'm still going totally straight. These Mopars had this crazy over-assisted kind of one-figure steering that you would find in like a Mopar box or like an old Cadillac of this era was the same kind of one-finger thing. you know, they weren't really built for performance. Steering feel wasn't there, and it was never really kind of meant to be. No car back then, except for like the WS6 equipped Trans Ams and stuff, had any type of steering feel if it was an American manufacturer. Or if you didn't have power steering, then you got some steering feel, but otherwise not so much. The other portion of it was, this car was optioned out with power brakes. It's got discs in the front, drums in the rear. So when you step on the pedal, you know, it stops okay. It's not fabulous, but it'll haul you down pretty well. And as far as like ride quality, it actually drives beautifully. And if I close the windows, believe it or not, it's really quiet.
Edgy is Dodge, and it always has been Dodge. I mean, you go back to the days of the street Hemi, they push the envelope, and they don't want to look like every other car. And they're not afraid to make a car that says Dodge on it that doesn't look like the neighboring Dodge. It doesn't have to have every style component going through it. Dodge this is what it is because it doesn't look like anything else. I think that's cool. I think that's really what the DNA of Dodge is all about, is doing things that people don't think you can do.
In the beginning of this episode, I asked the audience to guess what I was driving. I gave you 3 clues. Now, for those of you who got it right away, way to go. When I first saw this car in the magazines years ago, I wasn't really sure what it was and or what to make of it. After driving it though for an afternoon, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the NASCAR styling and the flared fenders and the 15x8 wheels and the red interior and everything else. It's a great period correct car for the late 70s when performance was low but bravado was high. This is the type of car that you could still take your family out and you could still go to car shows, and more importantly, you can still get into for not that much money. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on the House of Muscle.
Before you go, make sure to subscribe to the House of Muscle channel by clicking below, and we'll make sure you never miss a new episode of the House of Muscle.